Hey Sahid, outside the Fine Arts Museum in Boston, where we learned if we waited another 20 minutes until it got to be 4 o'clock, we could get in for free rather than paying for $50 worth of tickets. So I'm here chilling with Laura. Laura! Um, and I forgot my headphones, so I'm recording it on her phone with her headphone because she has an iPhone and they didn't design it to plug into normal Android phones. Um, Anyway, so rundown life update. Yet on Thursday, I went and saw the Declaration read aloud from the old State House to a cheering crowd, and then got red, white, and blue confetti blown on me, um, which is, I think, a good introduction to the history you were talking about in your last video. I think maybe one of the shocking things when you listen or read the whole text of the Declaration of Independence is the one of the paragraph in the problems the rebels are bringing up to the king is that he incited war from natives onto colonists, and I think most people would find the language of it quite shocking. I mean, it's 20 or 30 words talking about how vicious natives are. But historically, the Europeans did some pretty nasty things, both to each other and to the natives. But despite that, it's still like a document that is kind of a first in the world for people getting together and declaring this like idea that would outlive them, that all men are created equal. Um, and I think history is kind of full of these like people trying to do good, and if we try to judge them by modern standards, they're not achieving it, or kind of these contradictions in how we interpret history. Like often, I think you and I would interpret like the long run events are driven by technology and geography, um, but we also focus a lot on like great men and women history, on these like individuals who drive events forward. And I think you kind of have the nuance to understand that both of those ideas are true. That without a few key people, history would have gone really differently. But also, if you're going to understand history, you have to understand that geography and technology are crucial in how things develop. Um, and um, yeah, and like things like that, societal change progress is like generally good because it gets us to our modern life, which is a lot better than it was 500 years ago. But there's always losers. Um, so I guess usually we say we learn history because you don't want to repeat it or something like that. Um, I think the truth is a lot of people that like studying history, and including me, study history because it's really interesting narrative, because it's a fun story, in addition to just feeling like it informs us better. Um, and wrapped up in that learning history is this idea that history is over, like that the story ends 10 years ago and we've turned the page and we're in some different era. But I think that is maybe the most compelling reason to study history outside of just it's interesting, is that it's not over. Like we, like the people in the past made mistakes constantly, we're going to make constant mistakes, but it's about trying to end up pushing the ball forward, like making life better for the people that come after us, and accepting that we're not always going to be perfect at everything. And I don't know, especially there's a lot of interest in revolutions. I'm listening to podcasts on revolutions right now, and there's this point that revolutions, while they're sexy, like they're fun to study, are really bad. Like lots of people usually die when there's a revolution, and it's better in the long run to be part of small incremental progress that makes society better without having to cut off a bunch of people's heads. And we like as people need to be conscious that like a revolution is a bad thing that'll happen if we don't think and reevaluate our like positions and try and accept change from everyone. Um, so on a less historical topic, I found out how to do control on my orbital dynamics problem I was working on. The big thing I ran into was using something called a time-delayed PID controller. Um, so I look at the system like half an orbit cycle earlier and make control decisions now based on that. And it brings up how it works uncertain systems get into things like time-delayed differential equations, where your dynamics rely on the state in the past, and it in part really complicates ordinary differential equations problems, but it also like expands the amount of things they can explain in this really natural way. So I'll text you a link about time-delayed differential equations, or I'll put in the show notes. But are there any similar kind of easy edits or kind of natural generalizations of things you're working on that is like very, very natural but gets you to be able to describe a lot more systems? So hope you have a good week, and see you when you make your last video.